Large program today. 4 topics. Who is using profanity and going viral with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland? Why, and what's your opinion? Why did Trudeau smile and as much as boot our guest, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, out of Canada with not even a loot bag to take home? Lisa LaFlamme was much more about the impending death of network television than it was about ageism or gender or anything else. Wait until you hear about that and television in general. And is separatism dead in Quebec? Some say it is. I say it is still lurking, and in a completely different way. All of this coming up right now on Sherman Unlimited.
You wanted real talk, and this is where you'll hear it. Uninhibited by the toxic influences of cancel culture, unvarnished and unfettered, unencumbered by the censorship of traditional radio, uncontaminated by big media interests.
And now, Sherman Unlimited.
What a surprise. 2 weeks have gone by since we all learned of Lisa LaFlamme's exit from CTV. And so much has happened. So much, in fact, that the guy responsible is no longer in charge. Off for some time with his family, they say. Right, and I'm taking a breather from life to do a bit of space travel. Anyway, enough people have said plenty about LaFlamme. That's not what I'm going to talk about today. If you listen to Sherman Unlimited whenever I release a new one, you know that my take on things is sometimes different. Sometimes it's harsh, but not always. But it's through my own lens labeled, I calls them as I sees them, always. I told you to stop barking up the ageism tree, the gray hair tree, the sexist tree. I did not, and I do not think that any of those things played much of a part in Lisa's disappearance. This, to me, is about expensive personalities within Bell Media and, frankly, within other broadcasting conglomerates that are just too expensive to keep around. Why would I say that as it relates to Lisa or Bell Media? Because that company, and full disclosure, I'm a shareholder, that company bought Astral's huge radio holdings, sold to them smartly by the Slate family several years prior at peak value. Bell Media also bought CTV, and they acquired Chum Limited as well. It is reasonable to say that Bell bought the crown jewels of broadcasting in Canada at the time they purchased them. Canadian broadcasting is pretty different from virtually any other anywhere, especially the United States, as regards not just broadcasting, but cable television and digital streaming and cellular and internet. In the U.S., you don't see the degree of vertical integration you do in Canada. The big cellular networks like T-Mobile and Verizon are not vertically integrated. They are communications companies focused on communications for personal devices. AT&T, a little bit broader, it has DirecTV, a satellite TV distribution technology that is there if you can't connect or don't want to connect to cable. But none of these giants owns any over-the-air broadcasting. Here, Rogers does, Bell does, Shaw does, maybe not TELUS. Why did the Canadian giants rush to overpay and put it all under one roof? Well, they wanted content, and they could use it to drive up cellular minutes and desirability, and they calculated that broadcasting would be their ticket to greater wealth. Didn't work that way, so the broadcast piece, dependent as it is on talented personalities, has suffered greatly everywhere. But where more than Bell? Bell Media Radio, for example, is a shadow of its former self, with most of it now devoid of in-house news and dependent on CTV newsrooms in the same city or one nearby. Heritage Radio, like CFRB Toronto and CJAD Montreal, and full disclosure, again, I have worked at those stations and been president of both of them during radio's heyday. Those stations are a shadow of their former selves. In fact, those stations and their television and newspaper counterparts are in the middle stages of dying wherever they operate. Who wants them around anymore? People over age 50 who grew up in homes and at times when they were essentials, when they are clearly not anymore. People under 50 and certainly under 25 don't care about these media anymore. Whatever it may look like or sound like, they get both their news and entertainment elsewhere, and it's always online. My contemporaries, old farts though they may be, for the most part tell me I'm the crazy one, that TV news and the daily paper and radio do matter. But they don't. Or at least they don't matter anywhere near as much as they once did, or as little as they soon will. They like to advertise that they have the biggest share of the market that they're in, and you can check it out on a pie chart, and it's true. But what they don't tell you is that the pie chart has shrunken to a tart chart. So you may have listenership or viewership or readership of half of the market. Sounds formidable until you realize the entire market is now maybe 40% of what it was 15 or 20 years ago. And the ad dollars have moved to highly targeted online options and away from the more traditional broadside of the barn targets offered by these conventional media. So last episode, I said that Lisa is gone because Bell Media mistakenly thinks a smart-looking young man with a non-traditional last name and aged 39 can get them more for cheaper. Cheaper he'll be, but more than what they had? Not bloody likely, and I'd say less. Which actually brings me to the heart of the topic. Bell Media is responsible to shareholders who never want less. They want more. So if Lisa's audience isn't growing, rather shrinking, why not use Omar? And this past week, news came out of the United States that NBC is considering releasing the 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. hour and letting local stations program it themselves. NBC can't afford to due to audience shrinkage. Shrinkage that's dramatic. That means a lot of hour-long programs we older folks got used to will disappear, and they'll cease production. 25 or 30 years ago, my wife and I probably were fans, as you were, of Law & Order, ER, NYPD Blue, Boston Legal, LA Law, and on it goes. Some are still around. Law & Order, including various offshoots, remains and is probably the greatest franchise ever put on commercial American TV. I don't have the numbers, but do you think these programs are attracting new viewers under 45? We like Blue Bloods a lot. Again, mature audience, not a young audience. These programs are multi-million-dollar productions per episode. So NBC is saying, well, you may not get that stuff anymore. And if NBC says that, well, you can bet CBS and ABC and their Canadian network counterparts are abridging their spending or looking at it, and their programming not far down the road. Why are the big nets pushing their streaming efforts so hard? CBS pushes Paramount Plus. NBC has Peacock. ABC is hooked into Hulu. CTV Bell Media, Crave. See where this is going. Commercial-free, pay-per-use, streaming in your own time frame. No more major network broadcasts. No more appointment tuning. No more commercials. Why is Lisa gone with her gray hair and her age 58 out there in public along with her well-turned-out female gender? Likely because of cost factors and not much else. Folks, get used to this. If the big American networks were the old monster money operations of the 70s and 80s, this wouldn't be a discussion, but they aren't. The media we loved is the media that's now disappearing. The new media comes to you in your pocket, on your tablet, on your laptop, or on your flat screen on the wall, however and whenever you want it. And if you don't have time to watch it to completion, well, stop it and pick it up at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. or sometime next week. How can conventional TV rival that? No commercials. It can't. So if you wonder why stupid reality shows dominate evening TV, it's because they cost comparatively nothing and they can pick up a few young viewers and carry commercials. They are the television equivalent of hanging on with your fingernails. The present becomes the future. I'm Peter Sherman.
Sherman Unlimited. In your face.
Okay, American listeners, and for that matter, listeners in Ontario and across Canada, what do you know about Quebec, the province of Quebec? Do you really want to know anything about it? Well, I'm going to give you a little bit about it. For non-Quebecers, that province has traditionally been Canada's whiner. Quebec is, of course, a province dominated by French-speaking people. Il n'y a aucun problème avec ça, mais c'est facile de ne pas comprendre leur défi. Translation, there's no problem with that, but it's easy not to understand their challenge. which has always been to be equal to or better than any other Canadian province. I personally think they are and have been for some time. Problem is, many of them don't. We watched a movement called separatism or sovereigntist rise through the 60s and run hard into the 70s, 80s, and 90s before apparently falling off. Today, the dominant separatists embodied by the Parti Québécois are not in vogue. Their party polls in the 10 to 15% range, and it's a nothing burger in the overall scheme of things. Last episode of this program, when I spoke with Tasha Sheridan about her book on Canadian conservatism and her support for former Quebec Premier Jean Charest in the Conservative leadership race, she dismissed separatism as a non-threat simply because of the low PQ numbers. I didn't call her on that statement at the time because the topic was her book and her support and take on the Canadian conservative scene, but I do have some thoughts. First, I don't think that separation of Quebec is an idea that is anywhere near dead. I think it lives vested in the governing party, the Coalition de l'Avenir du Québec, or CAQ, CAQ as they call it for short, and its leader, François Legault. Quebecers love him, and he has a virtually assured majority in an early October election called for that province. It is worth noting that the CAQ, a relative newcomer, has accomplished all of this in well under 10 years. Quebecers love change. They're always there to be open with new parties and different approaches. Remember when they fell in love with the NDP under Jack Layton? Didn't give a shit about the NDP before, haven't since, but that's Quebec. Here's a very salient point. The CAQ and Mr. Legault do not have one single seat elected from the island of Montreal, which is where all the English Quebecers live. A better way of saying that is that English support for the CAQ is basically nothing, at least in terms of representation, which is why Legault can pass legislation that outlaws wearing any religious symbol whatsoever if you are a public sector worker or if you are a citizen within such environments. No cops wearing turbans or crosses or stars of David or kippas. No teachers wearing hijabs or niqabs. All illegal. How did the Premier thwart religious freedoms guaranteed under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms? The famous notwithstanding clauses. How? Because it effectively says that all these rights are guaranteed unless a province kills them using that clause. Some constitution. Another relatively new law pertains to French in the workplace, where in most instances, you'd walk into a store and speak to a salesperson in English, and you'd expect to be answered in like fashion. But you can forget it. No one has to respond in English anymore. Changed laws. In fact, if a member of the language police happens to be around, and yes, the language police do exist, and that clerk responds in English, he could be fined. But the charter guarantees language rights, you say. Not when the notwithstanding clause is invoked to pass the legislation. And it was. Premier Legault is making Quebecers proud. Not the English Quebecers in Montreal, but hey, who needs them when you can garner a large majority without any of them? He is making Quebec wealthier by successfully attracting business. So Mr. Legault is a grand success. Now, referring back to my chat with Tasha Sheridan, the separatist spirit will raise its ugly head, that's my belief, through this party, the CAQ, the CAQ. Why? Because these oppressive laws will be, indeed are being challenged. This will put Quebec at odds with Canada, where we believe things like language and religious rights are sacrosanct. At some point, either national public pressure or the Supreme Court of Canada will call Quebec's repressive actions into question. And when that happens, I predict that Premier Legault will declare unilateral sovereignty for Quebec. He'll say that Canada has long recognized what Quebecers know, that Quebec constitutes a nation unto itself. He'll say we want to maintain our traditional brotherly friendship, that there will never be border restrictions between Quebec and Canada, that Canadian money will continue to be used for convenience, but Quebec will control immigration, will issue passports, will make its own policies on issues like climate change and fertilizers and pipelines. And by the way, fertilizer and Trudeau's stance on it are both a lot of shit, but I digress. I am a Quebecer by birth, but I am and always have been a Canadian, first, last, and always. Keep an eye on Quebec. which could be the linchpin for radical change in what we've considered Canada to be since 1867. I'm Peter Sherman.
Nobody is getting canceled anymore. Not around here.
More in a moment.
If you pay any attention to me, you know that the Trudeau Liberals are definitely not my cup of tea. Frankly, I believe they're ruining the country that I was raised in by liberal parents, I might say, the land that I love, but the land that, if we don't get it fixed quickly, isn't going to survive, at least not as we know it. So that's the preamble. This is actually about what happened to Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister and deputy prime minister of Canada, on a trip to Grande Prairie, Alberta the other day. She was on her way from one place to another, so she was in a public space in a public building, walking with several aides, but I might say with no security, over to an elevator. A scruffy-looking man called her first name while an accompanying woman shot video, and here's what it sounded like.
Chrystia! What the fuck you doing in Alberta? You fucking traitorous fucking bitch! Get the fuck out of this province!
You don't belong here.
You're a fucking traitor! You fucking bitch!
Obviously not a liberal supporter. Well, as I mentioned, neither am I. However, I have experience in public service, and regardless of her party or his feelings, that guy had absolutely no business talking to Chrystia Freeland or anyone else that way. It is disrespectful, it is rude, and it's way out of line. Make no mistake, that was verbal assault. Now, there's no such crime, but that's what it was. If anyone were to lay charges, it would have to be police, and it's unlikely there'd be anything worse than disturbing the peace. That said, someone in authority at the building asked this guy to leave. Listen.
And I'm going. No. I'll walk up with my own power. Don't touch me, okay? Don't touch me. Go.
We are
leaving.
Do not touch me. We are leaving.
Do you love that? Do you love her? Do you love Chrystia Freeland?
No. Get.
I fucking hope not. Don't tell me to get. I'll walk out with my own power, okay? So back off.
So he's asked to leave, and he does leave. No raised arms, no physical threats. He does, on the way out, amplify his obvious anger, and he gets a little closer to why he's angry. Aside from letting the minister know how he felt, and purporting, I suppose, to speak for Albertans, who generally don't care for Liberals, what did the man hope to achieve? Well, here he is again.
She's destroying this country. Your kids are going to have no future. Okay? I hope you get it. Somebody's got to get it, because we're the only ones fighting for this country right now. And it sure as hell isn't her.
The end of the video, which is still rolling as the couple exits the building, captures the essence of what they were doing there. Now listen to this carefully.
Oh my God, we came at the perfect time.
Oh, that was perfect timing.
Holy shit. That needed to happen. Way to go, mister.
And as you can see, it ends with, "Way to go, mister." As you heard, this was a setup. It was designed to do precisely what it has done. The two wanted to confront Chrystia Freeland and come out with video that would go viral. If you liked it, you'd say, good for him. He told her what she needed to hear. If you don't like it, and I don't, it appalls you as it appalls me. No one ever needs to talk to an elected public official that way. Truth is, I can't abide Chrystia Freeland. But if introduced to her, I'd be deferential. I didn't vote for her, but enough people did that she has that job. There are lots of ways to go viral. If you want video of yourself to go around the world, hey, you could always commit suicide publicly like the self-immolating monks once did decades ago, and that was before we had personal video recorders everywhere, but they wanted to make a point, so they called the media, and indeed cameras captured an awful sight. If you want to go viral today, you can do what the guy did in Alberta. But there will be no prizes for you in the end, and nothing you've said will play a role in defeating the government in power, such as it may be. Mostly, though, what you're demonstrating is that you have a message based on your own opinions, but that you are absolutely clueless as to how to get it out there so other people will support you. If the intent was to stir the pot, there was a lot of defense for Ms. Freeland on social media in the aftermath. Expressions of regret that she had to endure that, though you could see her smiling inside the elevator. Maybe a bit more interestingly, many people posted messages like, "Pretty crude, but not surprised." It shows the depth of the venom people have for this government. My opinion, again, is that bad behavior defeats any attempt to turn people against the Liberals. I'll let you judge for yourself. I'm Peter Sherman. You probably noticed, even if just in passing, that the German Chancellor visited Canada and spent time in front of the cameras with our Prime Minister. Everyone smiled, but it's a safe bet that Olaf Scholz flew back across the ocean and had a few choice words on the way home for Justin Trudeau. Chancellor Scholz is representing a strong country, but one that is suffering and about to suffer further because it made a substantial deal with the Russians for natural gas and oil that's not coming in the quantity expected. The Russians are not delivering the quantities, and winter is weeks away. One way or the other, the Germans will get by, but the Chancellor was here looking for a deal. Canada is believed by many countries to be a long-term, reliable energy exporter because we have the goods. Scholz desperately needs Canada to sell him resources, notably liquefied natural gas, or LNG, shipped by tanker for use in German power plants and homes. He went home disappointed. If you followed this podcast or my years-long radio broadcasts, you know that I marvel at the buried wealth of this vast country, and I wonder why we allow the twerp in charge to keep us perennially indebted and unwilling to tap our own riches. We, the people, own them, not Justin Trudeau. We are, in this case, not only an ally of Germany, we are in the G7 with Germany, and it doesn't get much closer than that. Fact is, we have more natural gas available than we or anyone else would ever need for whatever time it takes to find a new and efficient form of energy, probably not even yet conceived of. But we do have a problem getting the stuff to a port where the special LNG ships can be loaded. Why? Because Trudeau, and frankly those before him, don't want to mix it up with the Quebec government or the Indigenous peoples to allow for the building and or completion of pipelines to bring this wealth to East and West Coast ports. And because Trudeau's vision of a net zero carbon future may be wonderful, but is not realistic. Trudeau is saying that he doubts pipelines and port terminals can be built fast enough to satisfy European energy needs. Well, Justin, building them more slowly beats the shit out of not building them at all. The government is saying that green hydrogen makes more sense. They've been talking about hydrogen energy for decades. Do you personally know of a single hydrogen power plant? Do you know of a service station that refills automobile hydrogen tanks? Do you know of anyone building hydrogen cars? I can answer, no. Not that it hasn't been tried, just hasn't been fruitful, like proliferating EVs or using natural gas as an energy source of choice. Trudeau waffled. This direct request for Canada's urgent help with LNG got this tepid response about climate change.
If there's a business case for it to export LNG directly to Europe, and that's something that economic conversations are going on between businesses in Canada and in Germany. But in the medium term and long term, Canada can and will position itself to be a key supplier of energy to the world in a net zero economy. And that means investments in hydrogen. It means more investments in critical minerals so we can be a reliable partner on that. It means investments in a range of solutions, from renewables to nuclear to a range of things. In the short term, we are very much looking at what we can do, because in the medium term and long term, we are accelerating our commitment to decarbonization, to fighting climate change, and to ensuring the good jobs, including good jobs in the energy sector across this country, that will be providing in a clean way what the world needs.
I could continue for him. Listen, blah, 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 blah. Listen, Prime Minister, the guy needs LNG. He needs it now and for some time to come. He came to you. You embarrassed him. You can use your power to thwart Quebec's no pipelines and or the Indigenous tribes' objections. This is national and international interest we're talking about. Our place in the world, our contribution, and these various objectors have to take a back seat. In a word, squash them. God knows you spend enough time squashing us. LNG is a terrific fuel source. I know it doesn't help your fixation on net zero for the world within the next 20 to 30 years, but that's not in your power in any event, and notably not with the likes of China and India caring not a whit about carbon reduction. Not saying we do nothing, not saying we don't develop new energy sources that are really clean, but I am saying the equivalent of calling the fire department after the house has burned down has never been a very effective strategy, and that's what you told Chancellor Schultz to do. In so doing, you also told Canadians that despite crazy taxes, including the carbon tax, despite hungry kids in Canada, it's not bloody likely you'll be pushing for Eastern or Western LNG terminals to be built, despite companies affirming that they are ready to do so. So aside from all these realities, you are screwing us. I never much liked being screwed unless I got kissed first. There actually is a case for exporting LNG, a business case. You say there's not. There's a humanitarian case. And the case for supporting close friends and allies is the strongest case of all. As my Prime Minister, you are a total disappointment. You are letting me and everyone down, and you are letting our allies down. I'm Peter Sherman.
Sherman Unlimited.
Let Peter know what's on your mind. Drop him an email. info@petersherman.com.
Find future episodes wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So if you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you really liked it, tell 3 friends. If you really hated it, tell 3 enemies. We'll talk again soon.